I think just interesting. You say between hamster wheels and rabbit holes, there's a lot of a lot of small mammals.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to episode 264 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast, a proud member of the Marketing Podcast Network. I hope you're well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rock star, but I am a CMO, and on this podcast, I chat with a band of marketing chums who share their marketing street knowledge, which I hope will bring out the rockstar marketer in you. This week, Jeff Clark is back, and we are kicking off a series digging into a CMO's first 90 days and how that fits into our 5 effing marketing fundamentals. This week, we're focusing on the knowledge. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back. After this word.
We'll be right back.
After this word. We'll be right back.
Raise the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more to reach the professionals who are more likely to find your ad relevant. Plus, with 1 billion members on LinkedIn, that means you'll have access to 130 million decision makers and 10 million C-level executives. That's a lot of millions of the right people. Get started today and see how you can reach the right buyers with LinkedIn's enhanced targeting tools. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
USAA.
Hello, Ian. Welcome back to the Rockstar CMO studio.
Thank you very much, mate. How are you doing?
I am doing well. It's sitting here on a beautiful, sunny, spring-like day, one day in advance of the spring equinox, as a matter of fact. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah. No, we've had some lovely weather as well. So I know that this will go out in a week's time. So God knows what the weather would have done by then. But so
yeah, I think it's going to go back down.
So we can't be dependent on for accurate weather forecasting this week because there's a little delay before I publish this. But yes, we've had an absolutely beautiful day today. Apparently, we're going to have a beautiful day tomorrow. And as you say, as the equinox comes upon us, the weather has taken a suddenly good turn. So
hallelujah.
Yeah. And how was you've been off for a week or so. How was your trip?
Well, as we were talking, I went further south. So I went all the way down to South Carolina, where it was definitely spring down there, which is always nice at this time of year to get that little touch. But it was a good trip and nice weather along the way.
Nice, cool. All right. Well, we've almost covered 2 agenda items there, not just the weather, but also an update on what you've been up to. Okay, so this week, and I can't remember whether we promised this to the listener or not, or we decided this last week, but we've been inspired by some posts that we've seen on LinkedIn, not least by our old boss Grant Johnson, who lives rent free in our podcast.
We got to do something about that
because we're constantly mentioning him, and he has been on the podcast before. But about the CM, and the topic is the CMO's first 90 days. And also, what I also wanted to share was some latest research. Perhaps we'll chat about this on another podcast episode, because I don't think we've got time today. But there was positive news on the tenure of the CMO. It is now longer than 90 days, according to Spencer Stewart. No, there's actually after years and years of evidence that the CMO tenure was getting shorter. Apparently, the latest research suggests it's turned a corner and is back up again. But anyway, those first 90 days are still going to be important, right? So, and the other thing is, I thought I'd resurrect our little topic around the 5 effing fundamentals, which we haven't talked about for a while, which, of course, are the master plan, knowledge, story, campaign, and machine, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail. And I'll include a link in the show notes as a reminder, because
it's been a year.
A year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's been a year since we discussed them. So we'll be talking about those. And I thought maybe we'd frame the first 90 days in terms of what you do for the master plan, knowledge, story, campaign, and machine. Knowing us, I thought we're never going to cover all of that in 30 minutes or 25 minutes or whatever we try to go for here. So I thought we'd go for the knowledge this time around. The other thing is we're talking about the first 90 days, but I'm hoping that this is going to be a good conversation, because I think it's good for marketers to have a periodic reset, right? So it's hard to do that when you're on the regular hamster wheel of marketing. So hopefully this will be generally useful. So what say you, Jeff? I'll finally let you have a word.
Yeah. I had a great trip. Sorry. So, given that the 5 fundamentals we discussed are fundamental. I mean, there's really no reason why the CMO shouldn't be, putting them into practice on day one. So in their first 90 days, they should be thinking about these fundamentals, and some are more applicable than others, but because maybe once you've got the 90 days under your belt, you're ready to really start thinking about covering them in a more comprehensive way. But I do think it's important. So I know you already kind of went down and very quickly listed what the 5 fundamentals are. But do you want to do a quick recap?
Sure. I'll do a quick recap. And also, just to that point that you just made, I mean, when we were talking about this before we press record, right? Is that I don't think you haven't got 90 days to sit there and think about it. You have to be on point with all of these fundamentals from day one, as you say, right? So our 5 effing marketing fundamentals are the master plan, which is and that's where we talk about our OKRs and objectives and how we develop those and what our plan is and what we're trying to do. The knowledge, which is all of the research and all of the data that we need in order to do our jobs. The story, which is really the content marketing we want to do, the content campaigns and the general story of the business, how we tell the story of our products and how we interact with the market. And then getting the rubber starting to hit the road with that, which is the campaign, which is our 4th fundamental. And our 5th fundamental is how do you bring it all together? And we've called that the machine. So I think I covered all 5 there. Did I miss anything there, Jeff? I think that was that.
No, I think you remembered, and it is great to have show notes so that we don't skip over things. But I think the thing is that when we think about this first 90 days, is that the sequence of which you sort of put these in play. I mean, as we said, you kind of need to be working on these all at the very beginning. But it's like from a way of talking about the prioritization, I think we wanted to make sure we didn't start with a master plan, because you may not be quite ready for a master plan on day one, maybe by day 90. But where do you think we should start?
Yes, well, I think we should start by neither of us are paying attention to the show notes a little bit. But as we were preparing for this, as I mentioned earlier, and my faux pas, it became apparent we'd run out of time if we tried to cover the first 90 days for each of these 5 fundamentals in one show. So for this episode, I think we should focus on the knowledge. And as you just pointed out, when we documented our 5 fundamentals, we put the master plan before the knowledge, which was quite a big debate, wasn't it, between us when we were putting
It was extensive.
when we were putting the fundamentals together. But in practice, and specifically for the first 90 days, we probably would actually start with the knowledge rather than master plan, especially as, and I've found this, it's a unique time that we can be objective, look from an outsider's perspective before we get institutionalized and on that hamster wheel that I keep referring to, right? We just start doing the thing and we've lost that objectivity. So we're going to start with the knowledge. Do you agree, Jeff?
I think just interesting. You say between hamster wheels and rabbit holes, there's a lot of a lot of small mammals.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think so. And one of the things is that when you're in your role for a year or so, as you go down there's a lot of the knowledge that it not only has been developed, but you would have had a role in developing and make sure you're putting putting resources towards developing that research. And so in the first 90 days, it's drinking from the fire hose to be cliche about making sure you're absorbing all the knowledge that the institution already has. And starting to think about prioritizing, where there are, we'll talk about this, where there are kind of gaps. So in your master plan, you could be thinking about, boy, we need to go get some information about our customers or our situation in the market.
Right.
So
okay.
Yeah.
So we spent 8.5 minutes setting this up. so we better get the ball rolling. And I think the other thing is that I should have pointed out, just to signpost the way the episode's going to work. We've got 5 things, right? So 5 things within 1-5 fundamental, just to keep the 5s and the F's going. So I think the first one, as we were discussing, is understand where the company's at. So do you want to take that one, Jeff? How do we?
Yes. So the first thing is doing a situation analysis on the company, and one of the things that we pulled from the very valuable book called First 90 Days, appropriately so, is the STARS model. So STARS model is basically an acronym for understanding: are you in startup mode, turnaround mode, accelerated growth, realignment, or sustaining success? Those are the S, T, A, and R, which we covered in detail, at least probably in more than one episode, but episode 229 certainly is one where we teed off our discussion. And then, of course, one of the things we talked about back then was the fact that, for turnaround and realignment, you can actually kind of split that into sort of some sub modes, because, if your CMO has gone into a turnaround, is the turnaround due to cost or productivity issues in the company? Are the products getting old? Are there new competitors that have all of a sudden just totally changed the market? And so each of those sets of strategies will change, the way you want to, again, approach the market and how you're going to execute going forward. So a new CMO, may be entering the company because of they're doing a shift from one mode to the other, right? We've been successfully for years, and now all of a sudden we got some issues. We need to bring somebody in to help shake up not just marketing, but kind of shake up how we're thinking about the company overall. And so there's a lot to pinpoint, which required talking to colleagues, digging up past research, certainly talking to customers, which we'll cover a lot of these things later. But it's like, you're thinking about the kind of the context of which you are put in this role to operate. And so, understanding where the company is in its trajectory is totally important.
Yeah, I really like this model, and I really like the way that we kind of dug this out from the book First 90 Days, and I've been thinking and using this quite a lot, this STARS model. And in my experience, I've done startup mode, I've done turnaround, I've done accelerated growth, and you're absolutely right. I mean, when I was brought in at Senshare, that was because they'd received investment and they were looking for accelerated growth, and that's why they brought in a new CMO. I've also seen realignment, particularly after an acquisition, where you might bring somebody in. So yeah, I really like this. I really like this model. But that's looking at the company. So
after we look at the company, what's next? or are you not ready for me to tee you up on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely, buddy. I just thought it was funny that I was making it clear we were working from a script.
For the audience, it is a loose script, so don't.
Well, I like. I don't think we're getting any Oscars on this one, but but the thing that I've been thinking about, with all scripting aside, is that I think some of the times the thing we forget about when we go into a new organization, a new company, particularly if you're marketing, and I've been thinking about this a lot as well, is the category or the market you're in is actually going to be very determinate to your success. So I think specifically around things like demand, right? It's very hard to stimulate demand if it simply isn't there in the category, right? So I think we need to find a model which is very similar to stars, but think about it like the category, right? So is the category defined? Are there competitors? What's the market size? What's the momentum in the market? Is it still in that sort of early adopters phase? Is it a growing category? Is it stable and mainstream? So if we think about things like CRM or CMS, they'd be stable or mainstream. Or is it on the wane? So maybe like document management or something like that. And whilst there are businesses that are still making money in each of those phases, you've got to really realize, because the category and the market is actually going to, like I say, it's going to kind of determine your success, isn't it? Whether it's growing or whether it's shrinking, and you need to understand that demand. And I also think that one of the things you're going to need to factor into your master plan and the effort that you need to do is, do you need to educate the market on the category? So if you're in that early stage, early adopters or growing, it might be that not enough people know about the category. And then you're selling the category and the problem to be solved, and not selling your company. And that's a bigger ask, isn't it? So there's a different mission. So that's my general view of, we need to understand the category. Anything to add to that, Jeff?
Well, it made me think of, and by the way, this is not in the show notes. It made me think of the fact with the first two, we're kind of setting up a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, because it's kind of, you understand where you are, or what you're trying to accomplish as a company from a revenue goal perspective, and then you've got to look at the market, and now all of a sudden you can start positioning yourself. And it might be also multiple markets, for larger companies. So there might be another thing we need to add to that SWOT analysis, which we'll touch on later. But I always think that's I've been involved in a number of workshops doing SWOT analysis, and I've just always found them tremendously helpful.
I think that might be a good episode, actually, if we go through how you might do that on your category, particularly as I think it's really important. And the other thing is, I think when you go up to the C-suite and you're looking at the OKRs and their expectations from marketing, if you don't know the true value of the market and the market size and what value you might be able to extract from that market, it's going to be very hard for you to agree or disagree with those targets. And let's be honest, a lot of those are kind of a little bit unrealistic, aren't they? When they're built by sales, it's like, and you're thinking, if we do the math here, you're gonna get 90% of the market, and stuff like that. So I can see you're laughing, and you're
there.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to double every year. What? What?
How? Exponentially. Yeah. It's like the mineral reserves in Ukraine. No, I'm only kidding. I don't want to go there. Let's not go there. So we've driven up there where we talked about, we started off with talking about the company, then we've driven up to the category and market, and that naturally leads us then to look at the market in more detail. So where do we go next, Jeff?
We're gonna focus right down on the customer, because I think that there's a number of very valuable pieces of research that typically be done by your product or solution marketing team, doing an ideal customer profile or ICP, persona development for the various people who are involved in the buying process, doing the journey analysis, the buyer's journey. And these are all good rabbit holes to put product marketing on the hamster wheel to unearth. But in fact, and by the way, we've covered all three of those things over multiple episodes. Probably too many for you to provide links to the audience. But you could just search on any one of those categories and you'll find a wealth of knowledge. But suffice it to say, you need to know the customer. And I mean, that's one of the things that the CMO coming in, it's like, okay, who's the customer? And maybe before, it's obviously a very good idea to actually go out and meet customers. But is there information you can review that would help you put those personal interactions into context? Because again, those are single points and not necessarily you don't want that to cloud your whole view of who your customer base looks like. So, hopefully this research has been done. And you can ask yourself, are the findings, are they up to date? Were they done too long ago, so they're out of date? Are they not comprehensive? Are there gaps in the knowledge? Particularly if you're doing, a realignment, or a turnaround, then there's likely there would have needed to be research on new buyers, new roles, new journeys. That if they didn't happen, it's like you got to start the projects to update the research, because these research outputs are going to be valued for the, as I wrote down, kind of valuable for the 90 to 270 days next in terms of planning, campaign execution, alignment with sales. So, if the CMO is not well armed with these tools, it's really important to expedite getting that knowledge.
Yeah, and as you say, I think we also have blog posts about your ICP and the buyer's journey, and of course we came up with our amped buyer's journey, which is kind of a amalgam of a bunch of best practice buyer's journeys that we've talked about. But I think that ICP point is incredibly important for our previous point as well, where we were talking about market sizing and testing how realistic the plan is. Right, is like, you have to know who that ideal customer profile is, but also you need to know, is this just an aspiration or is this realistic? Who is, and I think you touched on it there, who is really buying the product? And I think we'll get onto that in a moment. And so I think with all of these things, the ICP personas and buyer's journey, we need to ground these in the reality of this company. This isn't just get a template and squidge it on top, right? It's they need to be done. So
and given that in most B2B purchasing, it's multiple individuals or multiple personas involved in the buying process. So I mean, that could be one of the big gaps. Is it's like, okay, who who signs the check, but who's the person who's really pushing the movement to buy our solution? Who else is involved? Who are the gatekeepers? There's lots of things to basically look into to say, do we have a really well-rounded concept of who buys our products?
Absolutely. I mean, that persona work, that's where we find a lot of aspiration, isn't it? Oh, we're selling to the CMO or we're selling to the CFO. Nah, you're not really. It's this group of 5 people that are making the decision, that that person only signs it off. And I know that, but you're not selling to them. They're just part of the influence who are going to make this deal work, right?
Yeah. So then what is number 4?
Number 4. I don't know why I end up picking on this one, but so that that's a really good conversation about understanding our market, understanding the company and where it sits within the market, and then understanding in a bit more detail our customers and the ICP and their journey and all that kind of stuff. But we also, I think, in our first 90 days, and actually a lot of this comes from I think reading the first 90 days is probably a good takeaway from this conversation. But one of the things I think we need to think about is communication. And this is fresh on my mind, really, because I had a surprisingly long conversation with Kathy about this last week. No disrespect to Kathy and the length of the conversation. I don't mean it like that. But it was really interesting to a couple of things about this. I think, firstly, your first 90 days, there's some softer things you need to understand. And there's some early actions here that will sort of determine your internal personal brand and perceptions, right? So there are things you need to get right beyond some of those more fixed things that we talked about just now. And communication is one of them. And it was really interesting to talk to Kathy because she was talking about various experiences she had in large organizations and some advisories we've done. So because we tend not to think about this as a discipline that we need to have a plan about. I don't have a plan about communication. We just sort of crack on with it, right? So I'd encourage listeners to go back to that. But we definitely need to give some thought to communication and the culture of communication across the business and make sure we're keying into that. And then if I bring the chap who's living rent-free in our podcast, Grant Johnson's name up again, right? Our old boss. He recently wrote, didn't he, about his quick 5 tips on, it was 5 or 6 tips, wasn't it, on the first 90 days?
Yeah.
And one of them was to focus on communication, both up and down. And when I sort of looked at that, and I know it's only a quick one-liner that he put, it's almost like you're planning a mini campaign or a RACI model, right? Who are the people we need to keep in the loop? Who do we need to reach and influence? How do these people like to be communicated with? Where? Are they Slack people, email people, phone people? And then we need to put in place the reports, meetings, and the cadence of those. And I also thought, because we love a good gap analysis, don't we? I know we'll talk about that in a moment. It's a good opportunity to review what's been done and don't just do stuff because we've always done it. And a good early win to make yourself popular as a new CMO could be that you can strip out some redundant meetings and everybody will thank you for that.
Yeah,
right?
really. Yeah, that's right.
But as we get more into the operations and the detail of this, we'll probably talk about that more in the machine phase of our 5 fundamentals. But I think part of the knowledge phase, or the knowledge fundamental, I should say, because they're not really phases, is understanding how the business ticks. Do you agree with that, Jeff?
Yeah. No, I think, your analogy of kind of thinking of a RACI model of who needs to be communicated to who needs, or consulted. Sorry, that's the C of the RACI. Who needs to be just informed? Who's responsible, accountable? Because in many of the things that the CMO is going to do, we're probably going to be sharing responsibility and accountability with their colleagues in sales. So it's it's certainly something. Again, it's like if your predecessor or your boss who you're talking to has actually kind of done any work on this, let's use that as a starting point. But in your discovery process of talking to other people in the organization, you want to kind of build that out to make sure you're communicating appropriately.
Yeah, and it's funny, really. I mean, having had the conversation with Kathy, I thought to myself, it's very rarely that you actually sit down and be purposeful about how you're going to communicate with this business. It just happens piecemeal, right, of particular meetings or particular functions or particular processes. But I think thinking more holistically about how does this business tick, I think is an interest, and you need to spend a couple of hours on it, I should imagine, just sit for an afternoon and have a real think about it.
It's probably going to get blown up after the 90 days anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But you need to think about it first.
It's a pause for thought, isn't it? And I think that RACI model, I think there might be something worth thinking about in this, in terms of, there's the RACI model, I agree with, is established, but also who do you need to influence within this business? And so I know the I is for informed, but maybe the I should be for influence. Who do you influence in this, right? So anyway, that's a bit of an operational one. And I'm sure we'll pick up on operations a bit more because this is going to be a series, isn't it? We're going to talk about all 90 days of all 5.
That will pop up again.
Yeah, so listeners, brace yourself for that. I hope you're going to enjoy as we dig into these rabbit holes one after another. So let's move this to the 5th one, and probably the most important people in our whole lives. What's next then, Jeff? Where
and why are we winning? Or you winning, if since it's anyway. So you're in this company and you want to say, so what's the record about how well we're doing? We want to assess where the company is succeeding, where we're losing, win-loss analysis, customer satisfaction measures, customer retention data, personal interviews with key customers. I mean, these all can be very helpful. But particularly if you're in a turnaround or realignment mode, you need to know there's got to be elements of success here, and there's certainly reasons why we're not winning in certain deals and things like that. So even the other stars modes, this is where you can uncover how marketing can best help the company succeed in its revenue goals, as well as kind of understanding, are there brand issues, are there trust issues, are there things that are kind of holding the company back, that some of the cases marketing can own the solution to that. Some cases it's about working with how we can influence, particularly with trust issues, because trust issues may be endemic around sales, support, product, et cetera, et cetera. So what data do you have? What's missing? Again, you could do a gap analysis to suggest what information we need to get. And as with the ideal customer profile and the other customer research, if these resources are not available, then in your first 90 days, let's make a plan to see how we can put them into practice. I know, win-loss analysis, we've talked about that over a couple of episodes. I think you've interviewed at least one person who's a practitioner in that area. And I've always found that's very valuable. I also worked at a company that did really exhaustive customer satisfaction measures. But at some point, then they say, "Oh, we've learned enough," and it's like they take it off because they don't want to put the money towards it. And then wouldn't you know, it's like a couple years later, it's like all of a sudden you're losing and you don't know why. So so I think it's a valuable resource to do on some sort of regular basis. And obviously in your first 90 days, go out and find the materials.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I teed you up for this last fifth one, right, I said the most important person, which is the customer, right, which is basically what this is all about, isn't it? It's understanding the customer. And I mean, I like what you said there about where and why are we winning, because obviously that kind of language appeals to the commercial folks. But I think this is really, this is about meeting the customer and doing that. And I completely agree with you. And the challenge I've often had with things like win-loss analysis and competitive intelligence as well is it's much better done by somebody external. And
absolutely.
I think, and these things do need investment. And if you just try and cobble it together by asking the sales team, the data you're going to get it's going to be better than nothing, but it's, and salespeople vary in terms of their understanding of the market and
their objectivity.
And their objectivity and their subject matter expertise. But I think that, when it comes to win-loss analysis and competitive analysis, then I think you need to get external folks in.
And actually, I mean, I totally agree with
like
you.
Us.
It's about the yes, exactly. It's about the customer, and we've actually hit on two things that are about the customer. Mm-hmm. There's the customer profiles, persona development, the descriptors of the customer, and then there's the how are we engaging and winning and losing or losing with customers. So they're actually kind of like two sides of this coin of really getting a deep understanding of who the customer is and how you're going to serve them.
Mm-hmm. And so that leaves us with our conclusion. And it was so. What do you take away from this, then, Jeff?
Well, I think that we said somewhat at the top is, given that the new CMO needs to think about all of our fundamentals, it is the research to inform the next steps in kind of planning, understanding the brand story, working with your team on campaigns, understanding how, the operations of the organization are working. It's like, this is such a fundamental, not to be redundant, that it's, I think it is certainly a high priority in those first 90 days. Cool. So, and I think we'll come back to some of these items from a different perspective as we go through the other of the 5 fundamentals that we'll be touching on in this 90-day series.
All right. So the 5 things we need to think about when we're looking at the knowledge fundamental in the first 90 days is the STARS model in the company, is the category and the market we're in. We need to look at the ICP personas and buyers' journeys, how the company ticks and communicates, and then we need to meet the customer and figure out why and how and where we're winning. So those are our 5. And so that leaves me with the last agenda item to ask you about. Jeff, what are we playing out with?
We're playing out with Brand New Day by Sting from 1999, and I think it's still a fairly well played tune on the downloads and all that. But it's I mean, the title is kind of self-explanatory. It's a brand new day for a CMO, so be positive, and try to set the foundation for how you're going to be successful in the days ahead.
Well said. And also, I need to share a quick story on that. Is that when I was at Manugistics, which was a supply chain company that no longer exists, I think they were acquired by JDA or somebody else. When that came out, I was doing my first tour in the US, and they had it as the brand song when marketing relaunched the new brand, and I was sitting in the audience as a cynical systems consultant watching marketing do their thing. And we reached underneath our chairs and there was Sting, Brand New Day, a CD for us to take home with ourselves.
Oh my gosh. So did that leave you with a positive, or were you still a positive feeling, or were you still cynical like, oh God?
Well, this is quite a nice aside, because I think that my career as outside of marketing has informed the way that I think about addressing the company, because I think about what the more junior me would have thought about when they sit in the audience and they look at a rebrand and stuff. I think we do. It's easy to get carried away when you're in your little marketing bubble, and you need to remember that.
Yes. I've been a bubble producer in the past, doing presentations to sales engineers, and I'm going, oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever.
Well, one of the things I always refer back to is, and we were doing really well for time for a minute there until I started waffling on, is we create the mealy words, and somebody has to say them in front of another human being, and I think sometimes that translation fails, right? Is you'll write something that reads really nicely, but actually if you said it out loud to another human being, it'd make you sound like a complete cock. So I think there needs to be that litmus test. And I think we're probably onto a really nice point about the fact that
interviewing the customer with your litmus test to say it was brand new day, the right song for us to play out on.
Yeah, but I also think that marketing needs to stay in touch keep its finger in all the little pies, from pre-sales consultants, to sales, to everybody, right? Because the intel you'll get from that is going to be invaluable. And I think that's a nice way to close out the knowledge, isn't it? That we'll get internal intel. Good show, mate. So I think yes, you're back next week, aren't you? I'm trying to remember our schedule and your holidays.
Well, since this week is going to be broadcast next week, then the following week.
Yeah. So I think, so are we're going to dig into the master plan next time up, right?
We're going to crack on with this for a little bit.
Plan. So that'll be pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to that, mate. So I'll see you again next week.
Hasta.
We're starting up a brand new day. Turn the clock on the way back. I wonder if she'll take me back. I'm thinking in a brand new way. Turn the clock to 0, sister. You'll never know how much I miss you.
Thank you, Jeff. So that was a tiny bit of Brand New Day by Sting from 1999. And we're still figuring out this new schedule of recording and then Wednesday publishing. So it's not Jeff next week. It'll be Kathy for her monthly drop-in. But we will resume our dig into the 90 days with the master plan in 2 weeks' time. So that's a wrap on episode 264 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thanks to Jeff for his insight into you, for putting your dime into your podcasting jukebox and jiving along with us. I've been your host, Ian Truscott, and you can find links to me, Jeff, and all the things we referred to there in the show notes on rockstarcmo.com, where you can also find our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes. We'd love to hear from you, so please reach out via the website or LinkedIn. Just search Rockstar CMO. I'm sure you'll find us. But please mention you're a listener if you'd like to connect. The next episode of The Rose and Rockstar with Robert Rose will drop on Saturday. And as I mentioned, Kathy will be back next Wednesday for a chat about Adobe Summit and localization. I hope you join us for both of those here on Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Hennika Watkins-Porter hosts The Entrepreneurial You, empowering entrepreneurs with insights on leadership, business, and success. Hennika, tell listeners what to expect from your show.
So we provide innovative business strategies and practical solutions to common entrepreneurial challenges.
And where can people subscribe?
Find us at hennikawatkinsporter.com, as well as the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.